This Victor Gao joins us, the current affairs commentator. Welcome back. Good to see you, Victor. This story of China holding U.S. treasuries is not a new one. In fact, there was a time a couple of years ago that I remember recalling that China would kind of pare back its holding of U.S. treasuries. That seems to kind of taken a back seat. What's happening right now with the China's holding of U.S. treasuries?
Well, first of all, please allow me to put this in historical context. I think ever since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, it is the first time that, relatively speaking, poor developing country, in this case China, is now the largest creditor nation to the only surviving superpower, in that case the United States, in the world. So this is a very important event. I would say from the Chinese perspective, if the United States could demonstrate greater fiscal discipline, then China will continue to be a happy and willing and ready investor in the U.S. Treasury, because for the Chinese to hold U.S. Treasury, it's a mutually beneficial thing, both for China and for the United States. It also further enhances the integration between the Chinese economy and the American economy. And eventually, if it is handled properly, both countries will be winners and benefit from this higher level of integration. So this is the overall direction. However, if the Americans lack fiscal discipline, then China may want to think twice about whether they want to continue to hold such massive amounts.
That's my question, because this topic has caused controversies on both sides of the Pacific. Some Americans think that we shouldn't have so many foreigners holding our debt, and I'm sure there are some folks in China say, well, why do we want to hold U.S. debt at all? And I guess my question to you is, what is the real benefit of China holding U.S. debt?
Well, first of all, I would say don't forget about 35 years ago when China and the United States normalized the diplomatic relations. At the very lowest point, China only had about 168 million US dollars. That's the total foreign exchange that China had at that time. And I remember Deng Xiaoping once said during a meeting that maybe one day in the future, China may have about 10 billion US dollars, and nobody believed him. And now China's total foreign reserve is in the range of 3.5 trillion US dollars. So for the Chinese side to hold about 60% or even 65% of our foreign currency US dollar denominated products is a very sensible and wise thing to do. And it helps the Chinese side because in the Asian financial crisis around 1997, 1998, many Asian countries actually were crushed because of the lack of foreign currency at that time. So for the Chinese side, there is this bitter memory which plagued many Southeast Asian countries. However, on the other hand, I think for the United States, they should continue to welcome foreign investment into the United States, because this will help the U.S. economy to grow more healthily and also increase the integration of the U.S. economy with the rest of the world, and eventually globalization will benefit all of us in the longer term.
Victor, I want to read you some stats here. Forgive me with these numbers. Chinese investment in the U.S. is roughly at $9.4 billion, while in China it's at $70 billion. So obviously there's quite a big disparity between the two. What are the two sides doing to move closer together, or quite frankly, is that even important?
I would say the smaller amount of the Chinese investment into the United States is not because China does not have the willingness or readiness or financial capability to increase the investment in the United States. It's mostly because of the U.S. concern about Chinese investment, and sometimes the highly complicated and unpredictable CFIUS review of foreign investment in this particular case, including the Chinese investment into the United States. Therefore, I would say from the Chinese side, we need to urge the American decision makers, especially members of the U.S. Congress, to be more liberal and also more flexible, and also to adopt a more global view in welcoming Chinese investment into the United States. And if there are any sensitive areas that they do not want to keep the Chinese investment in, tell us and in greater specificity. Otherwise, I would say Chinese investment should be treated just like investment from other countries. And the more Chinese investment into the United States, the more jobs we can help create in the United States. And people in America will benefit from greater investment from China.
All right. Victor, stay right there for just a quick moment. I want to get to something regarding this unique relationship. The U.S.-China relationship may not be perfect, as you just heard from Victor, but the incoming American ambassador to China may play a pretty big role in improving that link. Senator Max Baucus is one of the most vocal advocates of opening up U.S. trade relations with China. He has pushed China's entry into the World Trade Organization. He's also said having China in the WTO makes it easier for the global community to talk to Beijing about issues such as security, the economy, and diplomacy. Baucus will replace current Ambassador Gary Locke, who will be stepping down in a few weeks. Locke had focused on boosting U.S. exports to China and promoting Chinese investment to the U.S. He also did make it much easier for the Chinese travelers to get U.S. visas. Victor Gao, welcome back again. I'm sure you heard that. I guess my first question is, what's the Chinese viewpoint of Ambassador Gary Locke? Was he successful?
No, I think Ambassador Locke is a great American ambassador in China. He has represented the United States national interest in great distinction. And also because of his ethnic Chinese background, he is highly popular in China, and for a while he has become a household name. And I think Ambassador Gary Locke represents the best part of the Chinese heritage as well as the American traditions. And I think for Gary Locke to be the first Chinese-American ambassador to China, it is a great thing for China, and it is also a great thing for the United States. And I think he may have other political ambitions to pursue in the future. And I would say that probably is the reason why he wants to quit as the U.S. ambassador to China and go back to the United States, pursue his other political aspirations.
Victor, I will make sure that I'll ask him, and I'll reference you as well to ask him what ambitions he has next. But that said, those are some very big shoes to fill. What concerns me is that for Max Baucus, how is he going to fulfill those expectations to China? This is a very important relationship. What does the senator need to do?
Well, from the Chinese perspective, I think we need to deal with each U.S. ambassador to China with full respect and with the full weight that he may carry. I remember back in the 1970s when George Herbert Walker Bush was the U.S. representative here in Beijing. He got along very well with the Chinese leadership. He actually had several private meetings with Deng Xiaoping at that time. And I think that helped create a better atmosphere for trust and confidence at the very top between the top leaders of the two countries. I think when Senator Marcus comes over here, he needs to be aware of the importance of the personal relationships between him as the U.S. ambassador and the top leaders in China. And I think quiet diplomacy, a personal touch, and also a private channel of communication directly with the top leaders here in China will be very, very important. And each ambassador has his own fingerprint to leave behind, and also has his own charisma, and also his own way of handling his position. And if it is played right, the ambassador, in this case the senator, will be able to leave behind a great legacy for the betterment of our bilateral relations. And I hope he will live up to the great expectation.
Let me go to one of the challenges that he will be facing quite quickly. U.S. high-tech exports to China have dropped from 18% to 7%. A lot of it's part of the issue that you talked about earlier, some of the concerns from U.S. lawmakers and investment issues. This is going to be one of the top issues that he's going to face when he gets to China. How is he going to deal with that? And how do you think he should deal with that? And how are we going to strengthen ties between the two countries?
Well, first of all, if we look at the overall U.S.-China trade, yes, there is a huge trade imbalance. But again, that's not because of the lack of willingness and financial capability for China to buy U.S. goods. And in this particular case, in order to help the Americans to make up for the trade deficit in Sino-U.S. bilateral trade, I think the United States probably should consider to sell more high-tech goods to China, but I also increasingly going forward, maybe oil and gas resources, because the United States will become a net exporter of natural gas and oil very soon because of the energy revolution in the United States, energy independence. So I would say that going forward in the longer term perspective for the China-US trade, the prospect is actually quite bright. It only requires greater wisdom and vision and courage for both of us to take greater initiatives and to reduce fear and concern on both sides, to become better partners and to engage with each other greater and in closeness in order to benefit from greater integration of our two economies.
Victor Gao, current affairs commentator, thank you very much. Ending it on a positive note, discussing the relationship between the two countries. Thank you.